Hey gaming fans! So today I want to talk about card prices. And I don't want to just, go on about all the rarities and everything like that. Because if you have ever played cards or collected cards, you'll know that some of them are worth some money, some of them are worth nothing. Typically it has to do with the game, the state of the game. So, like when I played Yu-Gi-Oh, for instance, cards were really valuable mainly when they were being played in tournaments. There was like a few cards here and there that were just valuable because they were harder to get your hands on. They only came in a special pack or something like that. But the majority of the expensive cards would be like that because they were being used in tournaments, and they were obviously the more rare cards out of the set as well because you'd have all different rarities. But what I want to actually talk about is over time, you never know where your card's value is going to go. Now, with some games like Magic the Gathering, for instance, like they created a list of cards that they said they'll never reprint again. I don't know if they've stuck true to that. As far as I know, they have. But, essentially what they're doing is they're saying all these old cards that were worth a lot of money, they're never going to reprint them. So those cards will always stay rare and expensive. And so if you started playing Magic in the very beginning and you were playing with the original cards that came out, the first sets, a lot of those cards are worth a lot of money today because a lot of them didn't get reprinted. Well, especially the power cards. A lot of them did get reprinted, I should say, but the power cards, the really strong cards that were never considered tournament worthy because they were just too powerful. Unless you're playing in a format that allows for them, those cards just went up in value and they stayed that way. So then after that point, newer sets, when they started to figure out rarities, when they started to figure out the power curve and all that stuff, and they created rotation of saying you can only use cards from certain sets, the cards would vary based on what's legal to play in tournaments, what's not. So a card could be $60 right now, but once the rotation hits, now it's worth half that, maybe even less. Or it hits the banned list, which is a list of cards you can't play in your deck, and the value just drops to like hardly anything. But then there's also just better cards that come out in the future. And so you just never know. And I've had a lot of my cards still in boxes, and I've only sold a handful of cards. I have not gone and sold all my stuff. I've never, I've thought about it a few times. Like I've even inquired about someone buying my entire collection of Magic, just get it out of my house. And, I came close, but the guy came in way too low. And I said, forget it. I'd rather hold on to them for that kind of money. And so what I started doing was thinking about, maybe there are some gems in here that, for whatever reason, are worth a lot of money. And that's what I did. I started to look into it. And so I grabbed a bunch of cards because I was just going through a few stacks. And I was at a local card shop, and I saw in their counter some cards, not just Magic, but Pokemon, and even to some extent Yu-Gi-Oh! And I started to see cards that I knew I had, and big price tags on them. And that got me thinking, I'm like, how many cards do I have that have been sitting in a box that I've always thought were worthless, and now are actually worth quite a bit of money? Now, let's start off with some Magic stuff. This one took me for a loop. These are islands. Now, in Magic the Gathering, your lands are the most basic of card. Every deck has to have them, pretty much, unless it's a special deck that somehow doesn't use them. And the basic ones, these are islands. They just produce blue mana. I got a whole boxes of lands. But this thing that's special about these ones is these are from the very, very first set of Magic the Gathering called, they call it Alpha, the Alpha set. This was the original set. This was how they originally came out. And you'll notice the corners on these guys are really round. And compared to Magic cards of today, where they're a little bit more square. So these are obviously a lot more rare. But I thought they're lands, they're probably worth a couple bucks. course, I go online and I checked it out, and they're not. They're worth a lot of bucks. Now these ones are kind of played, and that was, you know, it's hard to not find these cards unplayed, especially back then. They didn't use card sleeves, but these aren't bad. They're not bad shape, but even in this condition, I noticed they were worth like almost $70, somewhere in that range. And I was like, excuse me? Like between 50 and 70. Now I'm just going on one website. I didn't do a lot of research. I didn't start going on eBay, and you know, it's just one site, a TCG player that I always go to. So they're pretty good with their price charting. But I was just kind of blown away by that, because these have been sitting in a box doing nothing, and I thought they were worth nothing. So it just kind of took me by surprise. And then a few other ones I pulled out. And I remember I had these, and I remember collecting these a while ago when they weren't so expensive. This is another one. This is from Arabian Nights. You can notice that because you could see right there, there's a saber. Right there. The symbol, it's a sword. It's like a saber sword. I think it's called a saber. Whatever. That's their symbol. So this was the first actual expansion set to come out for Magic. So Magic had their original base set that they put out, and then they created their first expansion set, which is a smaller set, and there was some pretty good cards. Now this isn't a really expensive card, but still, I probably paid, I don't know, $20. I don't know, probably not even that much. I don't think I paid much for this guy many years ago. And I was surprised to see that this one in this shape was going for about $250. Again, this was just sitting in my box. Like, I thought it was worthless. There's a few other gems in here that I noticed. And I remember because I used to buy collections from people on eBay. I used to buy like random boxes of cards just trying to hit the jackpot, you know. Because a lot of people, they wouldn't know what the cards were. They moved into a house and people left it behind, or it was their kids. And so they just put it on eBay. They're like, I don't know, random box of cards, Magic cards. So I used to just buy them hoping to find treasures. And one sale I got, it had these three in here. And these are all pretty old themselves. I mean, these two here are from that same set I just talked about, the Arabian Nights set. And this one is from Unlimited, which is the third of the base set. So the original base set Alpha, then they came out with Beta, which also had a black border. Then they came out with Unlimited. It's just printings of the same set, essentially. And then they came out with white border, because I think they started to realize they like white border for whatever reason. But what's interesting about these cards is they're signed. They're signed by the artists. Now the problem is, I don't know if that makes them junk, or if that makes them worth money. And I've, you know, watching things like Pawn Stars and other shows about people collecting stuff, it's a fine line when it comes to signatures, because you got to get them verified. You don't know if the person who owned these before just took a pen and signed them. The other thing is, do people really care about the artist who drew the picture to have their signature on the card? This could be more just for your own personal sake. And someone might just, you know, you've just killed the value of the card. So, I don't know. I have to look into this and see. You know, a lot of people would just take it on face value and be like, well, I'm assuming it's the artist, but maybe it's not. So, does that actually increase the value? I don't know. That's something that definitely I'd have to look into. I also found this one in the same collection, and it's a Birds of Paradise, and that was a pretty good card when I started playing Magic. This was like one of those the little more expensive cards you can actually pull in the current sets, but this one's also from Unlimited, so that's pretty cool. I forgot the value on this. I looked them all up. I was just like, you know, just out of curiosity. It was pretty high, but this one's kind of played. It's damaged. And then I had this other one also from the Arabian Nights. It's called Singing Tree. It's not very special, not a very great card, but it's still worth about $200 and something. And so again, I was kind of shocked. Let's just move on to another game, Pokemon. Now I just pulled a bunch of cards. I went through my stash and I started pulling out cards that I saw. Now the thing I learned about Pokemon, because I was never really a heavily collector of these things, I bought them to play the game. And I bought Pokemon when it first came out. I remember when they first came out on the shelves. I remember seeing it in a Walmart, and I'm like, what is this game? And I've heard people talking about it. So I grabbed a bunch of packs, thinking, what the heck, you know, got nothing to lose. And so I did that. In fact, I even kept one of the blister packs. It's, you know, the cardboard backing with the pack sealed inside. I even kept one unopened. I actually have it over there. I didn't bring it for the video, but you know, just on the case that this game blew up and became really big, and it did. And so that pack is actually probably worth quite a bit of money right now. But what I also noticed, learned actually the other day at the card shop, because I was asking what the difference in pricing was, and why certain things were more and less, and because I thought Pokemon wasn't worth anything, like the original base set. I didn't think it was worth anything, because there's been so many sets that have come out, and the base set itself is the cards are not playable. They're not legal, half of them, in tournaments, and the cards are so underpowered. But I think there's just a collector's market out there. So I learned about Shadowless, and I'm like, what is Shadowless? What does that even mean? And they had to explain it to me. So if you look at these two cards, I know it's the lighting is crap. Sorry about that. But you'll notice the border, the yellow border around the creature. And then if you look at the same card from another printing of it, you'll see a black line, right? A black shadow. So that's the difference. And apparently what happened was, when they first printed, this is the first run, the artist, I guess, forgot to put the shadow on the card frame. So they printed a batch of them without that shadow. So apparently, without the shadow, it's worth much more money than with the shadow. So I learned something new. And so this Gyarados here is worth quite a bit more money than, say, this one without that shadow. And I was shocked to find out that this Gyarados was, you know, I think it was around close to $100 or something ridiculous, or $50-$60 just for a Gyarados. And I was like, wow. Like, I remember just pulling it out of the pack and being like, interesting. Another one, again, borderless, or shadowless, I should say, is Raichu, and that's the evolution of Pikachu. Again, this card is worth quite a bit of money. It's, you know, in this $50 to $70 range. Even the Mewtwo, again, shadowless. There's no shadow. So I must have picked a lot of these up from my first stash when I first grabbed. And I also got the same thing going on here with, well, I got it here, Nidoking. Got one with the shadow and one without, I believe. Clefairy. That was also another one that was worth quite a bit of money, and that's without the shadow. And Zapdos, again, without the shadow, worth quite a bit of money. And the last card I want to show off, which really got me, was Charizard. This is without the shadow. And I looked up this one on price charting on the TCG thing. It was around $500. I'm like, are you kidding me? I just had that sitting in my box. Now, so the whole thing I'm trying to get to is that if you were a collector of card games, you played card games in the past, and you've thought about getting back into it, you never know what kind of hidden gems you can get in there. You could be sitting on some good priced cards. The hard part is finding them and pricing them properly and learning that. And don't just go to the first website like I did, you know, a quick search. And if I really wanted to sell these cards, I would have to do a little bit more research. And, you know, you can take it if you trust the card shop, if you trust your local card seller, you can go and take it to them. Usually they'll flip through your cards and they'll let you know what's valuable, what's not. But you got to really trust and don't just take their word for it. Anyways, yeah, I just wanted to show off some of these cards because it was just fun finding them, going through my collection of cards and pulling them out and wondering if they were valuable. Anyways, hope you liked the video. Let me know what you think. If you have any of these cards, what you've played. I always like to hear your comments down below. And yeah, we'll talk to you on the next video.